Welcome back, everybody. Got a really interesting one today. Adam Mockler. He is one of these left-wing YouTuber political commentators. He went on CNN and he debated Scott Jennings. The two topics are really interesting, and I'm going to counter every single argument that Adam makes. As a heads up, I believe I am on a collision course to eventually be debating Adam at some point in the future, so I'm going to keep all of the ad hominems out of this rebuttal.
Do you see really that this trolling of Trump and social media, which is doing gangbusters for Gavin Newsom's social media accounts, what's the pathway to actually bringing voters back to the Democratic Party? Because the internet is not real life. That is the truth. And I'm not sure I'm seeing Democrats understand it.
When it comes to Newsom, get the attention, drive the narrative. That's what Democrats should do.
I think the Democrats are hemorrhaging voters because they've chosen all the wrong constituencies. They seem to care more about illegal aliens than American citizens, violent criminals than law-abiding citizens, and the Palestinian flag more than the American flag.
That is not true, and that is
when you take those positions on things like that, people tend to run to the other party. And
is there one mainstream Democrat that said he likes illegal immigrants over?
And you know that's not necessarily
Chris Van Hollen? There's one.
He said that? Chris Van Hollen did not say that.
He went and had margaritas in Montana.
He met with Kilmore Armando Abrego Garcia, who was brought back to the United States. The administration conceded that he was sent there wrongfully, so Chris Van Hollen...
I mean, if you want to keep going down this road...
All right, Alencia.
You claim that Democrats like crime.
Hold on. As someone who does a lot of messaging in the Democratic Party, we do have a messaging issue.
The messaging comes down to what they choose to focus on. Abrego Garcia has faced several allegations of domestic abuse from his wife. She filed protective orders against him, but did not show up because her family convinced her not to. Now, you tell me, what do you think happened in that instance? In 2020, she again applied for a protective order where a judge ordered him to move out of the house. A year later, in 2021, she filed for another protective order, and she stated that he had assaulted her multiple times. What I love about Democrats is they will change their view on something depending on political convenience. All of these instances where his spouse made all of these claims, got all of these court orders, she later pulled those away. She later reneged on them. Now, hear me out. Democrats are the ones that think everyone belongs in therapy. Democrats are the ones that like to understand human psychology, right? That's what they'll tell you. And yet, when they have a clear case of Stockholm syndrome, and on her part, and Abrego hoovering, which they should know what both of those things mean, and the result of it, what happens in those cases, meaning the woman comes back to the abuser, they just completely ignore it. If there's somebody in this country who can be sent to another country and they are beating their spouse or beating their kids, that's where they should go. In case any of Adam Mockler's fans are still watching, let's just keep going with this. On December 1st, 2022, at a traffic stop on Interstate 40 in Tennessee, Abrego and 8 others were pulled over by Tennessee Highway Patrol for speeding and veering out of the lane. A Department of Homeland Security report stated that Abrego Garcia informed the Tennessee Highway Patrol officer that he was driving from Houston, Texas, to St. Louis, Missouri, to Temple Hills, Maryland, to transport people to a construction job, and had been driving for 3 days at that point. Driving 8 people to a construction job to another state? That seems kind of weird. 3 days? Well, that's interesting, transporting 8 dudes to a construction site. I'm sure they brought clothing and tools, especially. They especially would need tools to be doing construction work. What is that? Oh, no, the report states that there was no luggage in the vehicle. That's interesting. You know, any Mexican who's listening to this right now, or anyone who's working in construction, will tell you that this is obviously bullshit, what they're saying right here. Let's see. The officer reportedly suspected that it was a case of human trafficking. Well, that would be my conclusion too, Mr. Officer.
As someone who does a lot of messaging in the Democratic Party, we do have a messaging issue. But the real thing here is that we have to go to these voters and talk to them about the pain that they are feeling before we bring the policy solution. Because we do have the policy solution. We just have to figure out a better way of listening to our voters. And I think we are in this crisis right now where we are forced to do that. And I do believe that Democrats can come back and gain these voters back.
Now, I call this next segment the Pat Tillman segment. It's when I do a little bit of friendly fire towards another conservative talk show host.
President Trump dipping his toe in the socialism pool. Some of his recent moves have the government's hands firmly involved in a number of business dealings. For example, in an unusual move, NVIDIA has agreed to give 15% of its revenue from chip sales to China to the United States government. And in June, Japan's Nippon Steel was allowed to buy out U.S. Steel, but only if the White House was granted a golden share that gives them extraordinary amounts of influence over a U.S. company. And Trump has even leveraged his tariff policy to demand investment in the United States. And just last week, he demanded Goldman Sachs replace its chief economist over their tariff predictions. And yesterday, Bloomberg reported that the administration is discussing taking a 10% share in Intel to help rescue the company. But if you think calling any of this socialism is a bridge too far, well, conservative Eric Erickson thinks that that is exactly what it is.
The U.S. government would become the largest shareholder of Intel. This is actual socialism happening by a Republican administration. This is a horrible precedent. This is socialism. All of you people were freaked out about Mamdani in New York City wanting government-run grocery stores and saying the people need to seize the means of production. That's what Harold Lutnick is doing right now, saying that the government must seize the controlling interest in Intel, the means of production, in order to get government money. You can't just be against socialism when the left does it.
Phil, can you respond to that?
Thanks, Abby. It's actually Jake Day. No, Phil, you take a seat. I got this. Don't worry. You're going to embarrass yourself. All right, let's help John Galt out here a little bit, because when he says things like, we're creating a new president here with this, that just means that he has no historical context to any of this, and he has a very limited understanding of the United States. It's quite sad. I typically watch these people and go, oh, they started paying attention to the news in the 1990s. TVA was started in 1933. That's completely government owned. They build power plants, they build dams, they build transmission lines. So let's just start there. We can also jump as far close to 1971 when Amtrak was created because there were failing passenger rail lines, okay? We can jump back and forth whichever time period you want. Let's go back to World War I, World War II, where we built tons of government factories to build aircrafts. You want me to give you some names? I can do that. Now, he probably doesn't know this either, but that's okay. It's understandable. There's a lot of conservative talking heads that make us all look like dumbasses, but in the early 1940s, the government started the, Rubber Reserve Company, and the reason that they started it was because Japan had cut us off, and so Goodyear, Goodrich, Standard Oil, they had no access, and so basically the United States government created the whole rubber industry within the United States. They also funded these companies. They built the plants through the corporation or through the company, and then they leased out the plants to the private companies. The government owned the facilities, the government provided the capital, but the companies ran the operations. Now let's go back to the whole bullshit presidents talk. If you wanted to say this is some modern phenomenon, let's go back to 2008, where the government took partial ownership in AIG for like 4 or 5 years. I think it was like 4 or 5 years because they were going bankrupt. Basically saved them. They did the same thing with Chrysler. They did the same thing with GM. Now, I argue that they shouldn't have done that. Should have let those pieces of shit die, honestly. But that's because I drive a Ford. They should die too, honestly. The Ford keeps breaking down. Anyways, the main point I'm trying to make here is this isn't something new. This is something that our government and every government through all of time and history has done when they need an industry to thrive and survive for that nation's own benefit so that that nation can continue to thrive and survive itself. They will do so. Sometimes your ideals hit that wall of reality and go, oh shit, there's other competing nations against us. We have to do something else because this whole free market, privately owned by everyone individually approach isn't going to work if we're going to be competing against other nations in a world economy. Imagine it.
Respond to that, because I think it is perplexing that conservatives would be okay with all of that.
The idea that Donald Trump's not going to have influence, that's silly. He's absolutely going to have influence, but he's not weighing in and destroying the free market. He's not doing what Biden did, which is going in and trying to reshape the entire auto industry in his image. What he's really doing right now is he's saying there are better ways, but the free market capitalist
Wait. Are you talking? What are you talking about when you talk about Biden and the auto industry?
Oh gosh, did you not see what he did? There was no demand for EVs to the extent that the Biden administration wanted, so they regulated it into existence. They funded it to make sure it had subsidies to survive, and then when the subsidies went away, the industry collapsed, which was a clear indication that industry was not ready for its day.
Okay.
You keep citing the free market, but politicizing companies and allocating capital politically is not the free market. Supply and demand is the free market. And you say that Biden reshaped the EV industry in his image.
Oh, yeah,
Trump is
absolutely.
reshaping the entire tariff global order in his image. He's placing tariffs on countries that make no sense whatsoever.
I told you had to buy a certain vegetable at the store, and if you didn't like it, it was just too bad. That was the only one you could buy, and I was going to subsidize that vegetable industry. And oh, by the way, I was going to regulate that by the time 2030 came along, that's the only vegetable you could buy.
All right, real quick, I need all you farmers out there that are laughing to just don't forget to breathe. I don't think this guy quite realizes how much the agricultural industry, especially high fructose corn syrup, is subsidized here in the U.S. Like, just breathe. Maybe he wasn't thinking when he said all of that. Look, I told you Phil was going to embarrass himself, okay?
To have better public safety and more reasonable safety standards within Washington, D.C.
So now it doesn't matter, Scott Jennings, that voters are not happy with what Trump's doing, don't feel safer, all of that.
I don't care what they think. I mean, these are the same people who elected the mayor and city council that ran the city's public safety into the ground in the first place.
You don't care what the residents...
They don't know what's good for them.
You don't care what the residents of D.C. think.
I do not. I do not care one bit, and I'll tell you something else.
I feel like I do remember just a couple of weeks ago you were saying, well, secretly D.C. residents really want this because they know the crime is so bad.
I don't know
now
what
we
they
actually
want.
have the
I know what
numbers
they
that
need.
say, will Trump's federal takeover reduce violent crime? 65% say no, just 20% say yes. Do you feel like the presence of federal officers makes you feel safer, more safe, 18%, less safe, 61%?
Why would they say that?
Oh, I'll tell you why they would say that. Pick me, teacher, pick me. Hold on. Okay, here's why they would say that. 92% of the residents in Washington, D.C. are registered Democrats. Oh, my God. Is it a mystery? I can't figure it out. Wait. Okay, so wait. Let's do the math. That means... Hold on. I need to make sure this is legit. Let's do the math here. Okay, so 92% is Democrat. 5% is Republican. Let's just say, okay, so 76% are against the Trump doing this. And I am saying Trump because that's why they're choosing to be against it. 76% are against it. And so if 5% are registered Republicans, that means that 17% of the Democrats are for it. Making inroads there, Mr. Trump. But yeah, that's the reason. They're against it because Trump's doing it, and 92% of them are Democrat. You really think they're going to be like, oh yeah, this is great. I love what Trump is doing. Oh, and we can't forget a lot of them are criminals, which is like saying, 100% of prisoners believe that there should be less prison guards. Why would they choose that?
They say that they oppose it at a 79% rate. 61% of them feel less safe. When you ask them what they care about the most, it's not homicides, it's not carjackings, it's Trump's occupation of D.C. So the question then becomes...
Why are they so retarded? I was going to have the same question.
Who are we helping here? The idea that public policy isn't meant to serve the public in D.C. is absolutely absurd when Trump was claiming he was helping the public. So the question that I then want to ask is, why don't we mobilize the National Guard to the 8 out of 10 red states that are the highest homicide states? If this decreases crime, and that's sufficient enough to mobilize the National Guard against the explicit will of the people of D.C., why is the National Guard not marching through the streets?
The law.
Ooh, we got to answer that question. Of course we do. Don't skip it. The reason we have to make sure our nation's capital doesn't have a bunch of crime is because every time there's crime in our nation's capital, it makes national news. And you know what happens in that instance? It gives the go-ahead for more crime to happen throughout the country. This is the broken window theory writ large. If people see graffiti on a wall, they get to assume that, oh, you can just graffiti other walls, that graffiti is allowed around here. A lot of behavior that humans do is prompted. If you have I'm in the waste management industry, okay? And when somebody puts a mattress out by a dumpster area, the mattress has to immediately get removed. Otherwise, you're going to get other people putting their furniture out by the dumpster. Now, why does this happen? Because when you're coming home from work and you see a mattress or a TV stand sitting out by the dumpster area, you get prompted in your brain, oh yeah, I have that chair I need to get out of my house. I need to take that stuff out there. When you see graffiti on a wall as a 16-year-old, you instantly are reminded, oh yeah, spray paint, graffiti. I really like the way he did that. Then you go home and you Google graffiti, you get into it as a hobby, and then you start tagging up the place. I don't understand why Democrats are so confused about criminology and human behaviors. Stuff's so easy to understand. I thought they taught this in high school.
But all these red state governors have the ability to mobilize their National Guards within their own states. Why aren't they doing it?
Right now, I don't think they feel the need to. But right
even
now,
though
the
the
Home Rule
violence
Act,
levels are higher in some of those
states
cities
don't
than
have
they
a
are in
Home Rule
DC.
Act, but they do have a governor.
No, but they have a governor and they have a National Guard that's under the control of the government.
We're talking about DC right
They
now.
can
How are-
deploy
you will
that
not
at
set
any
But their
difference.
cities have
between
more
our-
crime
do you
than
not see
Washington,
the difference
DC?
between our national capital and every other city?
You're saying that the
No,
National
She
Guard is
doesn't.
a
No one's
defeater
saying
of
that.
crime, but then you refuse to endorse the National Guard being put in other states. You're going to say the National Guard is lower
I'm
crime
arguing
rates.
that the national capital, Washington, D.C., exists in a different federal zone, as was pointed out.
Yeah, but
A,
that
and
is
B,
only
and B,
that
it's
is
our
only
national
as it relates
capital.
to.
I'm sorry,
Hold
it
on,
is different
Scott.
than Memphis
It
or
is
whatever.
only as it relates to Donald Trump's role in this whole thing. When it
president's
comes,
role.
the president's, that's what I'm saying. When it comes to the rest of the country, governors have the. I'll let you
Governors
get
have the
it.
ability.
Governors have the
Yes.
authority to do what Trump is doing, and they are not doing.
I don't really know what point she's trying to make. Maybe she's trying to compel these governors to call in the National Guard as well. I don't know why we wouldn't support that. If the crime is that high, absolutely do it. Anyways, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Good.